This podcast is brought to you by Flipper, a marketplace to buy and sell websites, stores, and digital real estate. Plot your own path. Become a boss by buying a small online business at Flipper. Simply visit flipper.com/techtalks for a free consultation and 50% off fees. That's FLIPPA, flipper.com/techtalks. If you do visit, let me know how you get on. But now, let's get the show started.
Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, and I'm going to let you have a little peek behind the curtain today and tell you a little bit more about what inspired this podcast. And that moment came after 15 years working in IT, where I'd served my time in many painfully boring meetings. But I often found myself fascinated by how IT and all those other departments and the C-suite were all talking in a completely different language. And when the IT person opened their mouth, you could almost see them drifting off, hearing white noise, and thinking about what they were having for tea. And even TV shows like CSI did an awful job baffling people with techno-babble. And who could forget this unforgettable line?
I'll create a GUI interface using Visual Basic, see if I can track an IP address.
So I created this podcast 5 years ago to try and get everyone on the same page and try to make tech interesting and easier for everyone to see the value. And maybe, just maybe, begin to see IT as a business enabler rather than a blocker, or a department that took 3 years to deliver a project. So when I hear phrases like Zero Trust, Secure Access Service Edge, or SASE, I know some will get it straight away and others will think of that CSI line. So let's see if we can change all of that today and hopefully get everyone on board and we all walk away having learned something. So John Peterson from Ericom is going to join us today and talk about its Zero Trust Software Defined Access, which is a platform that helps organizations to isolate their interactions with web and cloud services securely. And it also securely and centrally manages next-gen access to their business-critical systems. So we'll discuss all of this and also learn how we need to encourage greater education around remote browser isolation and so much more. So buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way into the heart of Silicon Valley, where John Peterson from Ericom is waiting to speak with us. So a massive warm welcome to the show, John. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yes, so my name is John Peterson. I go by JP. I'm the Chief Product Officer here at Ericom. Basically, I'm in charge of product strategy and product management and a lot of the go-to-market product activity.
So can you tell the listeners a little bit about the problems that you solve for businesses at Ericom, and equally, what makes you stand out in this incredibly crowded market?
Yeah, it is a crowded market, and we are trying to bring some solutions to market that have some key differentiators in them. One of our main products is a product called Ericom Shield, and Ericom Shield is a remote browser isolation product. And that particular product, the problem that it's trying to solve is isolating users from malicious content that may exist on the web. So as we all know, there's good sites on the internet and there's bad sites on the internet. You know, the good sites you allow, the bad sites you block. But then there's also kind of the gray area of unknown, where I don't know what this site is, if it's good or bad. So, you know, the problem we're trying to solve is users that are clicking on things, visiting some site that hasn't been categorized as good or bad yet, but still in this kind of unknown state. And with that, we put those sites in isolation, allow the user to browse to it, but they're browsing to it by way of a remote browser that's actually browsing to the site on the user's behalf. So we're completely isolating or air gapping that website from the end user's machine, therefore mitigating the risk of malicious content or malware coming down to that endpoint.
It's been a few years since I was in the IT field, but when I was, everything on the inside of a corporate network was typically deemed safe and anything outside was treated with suspicion. But obviously, a lot has changed since then. And for anyone listening that is new to the concept of zero trust, can I ask that you share the philosophy behind the zero trust model and how it compares with that traditional security technology?
Yeah, so we are a big believer in zero trust. It's a concept that's been around for well over a decade. However, organizations have now started to adopt zero trust technology. I think over a decade ago, when I first started hearing that term tossed around, it was very difficult to deploy a zero trust model. So what we're trying to do is provide zero trust access to the internet, things that you're visiting on the web, as well as zero trust access to the intranet, things that might be applications hosted on-prem, and then zero trust access to things that might be in the cloud as a SaaS application like Salesforce or what have you. But the old days of building this kind of perimeter around your infrastructure doesn't work anymore, because your applications are everywhere, your users are everywhere. Trying to build this castle and moat approach to things just doesn't seem to work anymore, as users kind of come in and go. If you have the castle moat model and a user is on the outside of that castle and gets infected, but then one day comes into the infrastructure, comes into the castle, they can then spread that malicious content laterally throughout the organization. So zero trust basically reduces what users are allowed access to. They're only allowed access to the applications that they need access to, and not the totality of the infrastructure.
So what would you say the ultimate goal of zero trust is, if you could package that up?
Yeah, I think the ultimate goal is to reduce the attack surface. Yeah. So in the old days, you might be a remote user and you VPN into the network, and you have once you're VPN into the network, you can freely move anywhere you want throughout the network. With the zero trust approach, it's really isolating you down to just the specific application you need to get to, which ultimately reduces the attack surface. You can't attack everything. You can only attack what you're allowed access to.
And traditionally, of course, the humble web browser, that Internet Explorer or Google Chrome or whatever employees were users, were often off the radar. So I'm curious, do you think we need to encourage education more around remote browser isolation and why we need to take it seriously?
Yeah, I think, at the end of the day, you're really limited to what the user is going to do. And there's a lot of things you can do to improve user behavior by way of education and things like that. But there's always going to be the case where somebody just clicks on something.
Yeah.
And you can educate all you want, which I think is very important that you do. But users are getting, fished and lured into clicking on things. You get an email, it looks like it's a legitimate email. It looks like it's a link to Chase Bank, where you do online banking, and you click on it and the page shows up, and the page looks identical to Chase Bank. So unbeknownst to you, you're on this site entering in your credentials, your password, your credit card number, what have you, onto a site that's really bad, not good. If you had zero trust web browsing, zero trust isolates that from your endpoint, and it can create an environment where you can get connected to the website, but it's in read-only mode, for example. So you can't enter in your credentials, or maybe it allows you to access the site, but any malicious content that site may be trying to deliver to your endpoint can never get to you, because it's only coming to a remote browser that's in the cloud somewhere.
And like you said there, education is not the be-all and end-all, and it's not a silver bullet. But I'm curious, from the conversations you're having with clients and the kind of things that you're seeing and the approaches that you're seeing, have you seen any approaches that have particularly impressed you around clients and businesses tackling the issue of education? And did they get any improved results?
I think they have. Some of the more sophisticated organizations that I've seen that has implemented security education, sets up really good programs around it to kind of reward good behavior. Not just educate people and tell them about it, but reward good behavior when they are following the right policies and procedures that they've been trained to do. And they've rewarded them by way of, incentive things like, here's a gift card, if you will, for doing things the right way. So there's part of educating, but everybody wants to be rewarded for good behavior. So you can get users in the mode of doing the right things if they know that there's something potentially in it or better for them. And I think education is not something you do one time. More sophisticated organizations that I talk to, they have this constant training, continuous training, because there's always continuous threats and new threats that are coming out. So you can't just go through one training cycle and call it a done deal. It's kind of that, rinse, wash, lather, repeat type of cycle that you need to go through.
And something I always try and do on this Daily Tech podcast is bring in hot topics that people may have heard about, or in particular buzzwords, and not know too much about it, and probably a little bit afraid or intimidated by. So for those business leaders and decision makers outside of the tech industry, can you tell me a little bit more about exactly what Secure Access Service Edge is? Because I think it's an incredibly exciting space at the moment. It'd be great to talk about that in a language that everyone can understand.
Yeah, so I'll good question. I'll kind of respond to that in a layman's terms type of way. But Secure Access Service Edge, also known as SASE, S-A-S-E, but pronounced SASE, is a new trend in the cybersecurity world. And what this is about is it's about taking the kind of legacy security stack and bringing the different components of a security stack to the cloud versus on-prem, versus that creating a perimeter around your on-prem network. There's now this ability to move those security tools and controls into the cloud. Now, think about what's in a security stack. You'll have things like a firewall, you'll have a VPN, you'll have an antivirus gateway, you'll have an intrusion detection system. You might have a web filtering, also known as a URL filtering component. You might have remote browser isolation. You might have this new thing called Zero Trust Network Access, or SDP. Organizations commonly have had to buy all of these different tools from different vendors, or they tried to buy what was called UTM, Unified Threat Management, or all-in-one security boxes, and put them all on-prem. And some of the challenges with that now is it's costly, it's hard to manage, you have to upgrade things. When a situation like COVID-19 hits and everyone has to scramble to work remote, you have to buy bigger boxes and replace them because you now have more people coming in remotely than before, so on and so forth. So what SASE promises to do is to allow organizations to select maybe a single vendor or maybe two vendors and get those same security controls and tools from a provider, and that provider puts those tools on-prem. So if I need more capability, I just dial up more capability. I don't have to rip out and replace it with a new box.
And if we were to zoom out for the moment, just to allow everyone listening to kind of understand how that fits in the bigger picture of things, how is this new security concept of SASE, how can that coexist with Zero Trust, for example?
Yeah, so I think if you look at the definition of SASE as defined by the likes of Gartner, they talk about the types of products or controls that you need to have to be considered a SASE solution. They talk about having a remote browser isolation as a component of SASE. Zero Trust Network Access is a component of SASE. Web filtering is another component of SASE. But when you bring all of these things together and you put it into a SASE infrastructure, you inherently get zero trust because the user has to authenticate first before he's allowed to connect into the SASE cloud. And then there's policies and controls in the SASE cloud that dictate what the user is allowed to access. So it's not you just connect and access everything. You connect to the SASE cloud, and based on policy, it tells you what you should connect to or not, thus giving you zero trust versus access to all and have full trust.
I've had countless emails from listeners over the last few weeks talking about their fears and concerns around job security, while also seeing their interest rates on their savings drop considerably. And as a result, many are beginning to look at how they can invest in their future in an uncertain time. Could digital assets be the answer? Now, you might remember that I spoke to Blake Hutchinson, CEO at Flipper, on episode 1194 about how to buy digital assets and websites. In a nutshell, Flipper is a marketplace that you can buy and sell websites, stores, and digital real estate that are just ready to go. So if you do have dreams of running your own successful online business, or perhaps you're looking to exit your existing online business, my friends at Flipper can help you buy and sell. So if you're interested and want to find out more, please visit flipper.com/techtalks. That's FLIPPA.com/techtalks for a free consultation and also 50% off all fees. But now, back to the interview. And of course, we are living in a world of the user experience being paramount. So I've got to ask, can SASE greatly improve network security, but without burdening the user? Because it always leaves people a little bit cautious, anything like this.
Yeah, very, very good question. That is the thing, right? Is you got to make things seamless and easy to use for the users. Otherwise, the users will disable whatever you've given them. So some SASE solutions do that very well. But to be quite honest and frank, some do not. Here at Ericom, we focus on that quite a bit, especially given remote browser isolation. If the user is accustomed to just opening up their browser and visiting a site, that entire site should work. It shouldn't look or feel any different. It should not perform slower at all. It should have the same performance and the same user experience. So we strive for that. There are other many SASE providers that strive for that same thing. The fact that we're introducing a cloud layer, like your traffic has to go through this other checkpoint in the cloud somewhere, technically could introduce performance issues. So I would encourage your listeners, if they're out there thinking about selecting a SASE provider, that they not only check the security efficacy of the tools that the SASE provider is providing, but also the performance and the user experience. Because you don't want added latency where you're going through this extra thing in the cloud and now everything's running slow and then the users get upset and then they disable the solution that you're trying to give them.
Excellent advice. And I think it's also worth highlighting that for over 25 years, Ericom has delivered remote access, secure connectivity, isolation, mobility, and virtualization technologies to thousands of customers worldwide. And in doing so, you've allowed seamless user interactions with mission-critical systems while maintaining productivity and optimizing the user experience. But with all that in mind, I'm curious, what are the most significant changes that you've seen in your time at Ericom?
Yeah, so I think, in the early days of Ericom, you probably would consider the company a remote access company, providing solutions that would allow you remote access to your desktop or remote access to certain applications. And as the industry has kind of grown up and changed, so has Ericom, and I think I would now consider us a secure access company versus an access company. When I use the word secure and I put secure in front of it, I'm really talking about what we've been talking about is zero trust. So we've taken some of the traditional legacy products that we've had over the years and we've kind of migrated them and adapted them to operate in this zero trust manner where you're authenticating the user first, checking to see what the user needs access to, and then securely allowing him to access those things versus just connect and access. That's been the big trend. You touched on all of these things, zero trust, SASE. That's the direction that we as a company are going. And, really what we're trying to deliver is a zero trust access cloud versus on-prem solutions that were very point-based to solve this problem or that problem. We're trying to build a cloud solution that can solve many problems.
And I'm also conscious we have only spoken for about 20, 25 minutes today, but we have covered a lot of ground, and I'm suspecting it opened a lot of people's curiosity on the subjects that we've talked about. So if anyone wanted to find out more information about anything we've talked about today, or reach out and contact a member of your team, what's the best way of doing that?
Yeah, the best way is to take a look at our website. So visit us at ericom.com. You'll see our product portfolios there. You'll see our solutions as it relates to remote browser isolation, remote desktop access, zero trust network application access. All those things you'll be able to see on our website, and also be able to interact with us by kind of leaving us a message, and we'll have a salesperson or product person reach out to your listeners and answer any questions that they may have.
Fantastic. Well, I'll add those links to the blog post that will accompany this episode, just so people can find that information nice and easily. But more than anything, John, just a big thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to come on here and tidy up some of those myths, misconceptions, and educate us all on the subject that we've talked about. So thanks for joining me today.
Great. No, thank you. I appreciate the talk.
I think that JP did a great job there of simplifying a range of complex subjects. And if you strip all that technology away, it's companies that need to control who gets what access to which data and accurately. And if we break down that philosophy behind a zero trust model, it just assumes that attackers can come from within and outside of your corporate network. So no user or device should ever be automatically trusted. And traditional security technology such as firewalls, intrusion prevention and VPNs are all, again, based on the assumption that there is already a secure perimeter established. And zero trust, that claims the opposite. Organizations are not to automatically trust anything inside or outside of those parameters by default. And that is the big change here. And of course, the goal of zero trust is to reduce organisational risk by preventing unauthorised users such as cyber criminals or even insider threats from accessing pertinent data, applications or services. And finally, of course, if anyone asks you what Secure Access Service Edge or SASE is, you should be able to handle that question with ease too and impress everyone in that meeting room. So please feel free if you have any questions, comments, or if you were able to look great in a meeting for using what you've learned today, whatever it is, email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. My website is techblogwriter.co.uk, where you'll find all my social channels and over 1,300 interviews now. Man, where does the time go? But that's it for today's episode. So a big thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.